Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. Just doing the introduction to my newsletter for the 28th of July 2019. I started off by highlighting the fact that Boris Johnson is now the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. And I start off by highlighting that he's certainly off to a fast start with his new cabinet. I posted up a couple of videos about him, including his first speech outside Number 10 and his first statement as Prime Minister to the House of Commons. And I've given you a link which you can view these three videos, one about his background and his first talk outside Number 10 and his first statement in the Commons. So, a good start. I'm certainly very confident that he's going to do really well, and I think we're going to get the optimism and drive that really has been lacking in the UK for a long time. Okay, so the first story I've got for you is the BBC have subjected us to unashamed anti-Brexit propaganda over the past 3 years. For the past 3 years, we've been subjected to a deluge of unashamed anti-Brexit propaganda every day without fail. So that's the first story I've got for you. Second story is EU's new chief Ursula von der Leyen is the perfect advert for Brexit. Ursula von der Leyen narrowly squeaked into power in a secret ballot against no rival candidates in another triumph for European democracy. The next story I have for you is Britain and Sweden agree to cooperate on fighter pads. Britain and Sweden agree on Friday to study air combat cooperation over the next decade and open the door to other potential partners in a move that could see the Scandinavian country join a planned next generation UK fighter project. Next story is 5 EU countries negotiate with Boris to avoid a no-deal Brexit. Figures from Ireland, Germany, France, Belgium and the Netherlands, and are said to have contacted Mr Johnson, who is the favourite to become the next PM. And then of course Boris Johnson wins the race to be the Tory leader and PM. We've also highlighted the fact that German manufacturing recession deepens, the weakest showing in 7 years. A recession in Germany's manufacturing sector worsened in July, with the performance of goods producers dropping to the lowest level in 7 years. How Boris Johnson's top team shapes up. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen the biggest turnover of cabinet ministers outside of a post-election change in the party of government that anyone can remember. Then the advisors and officers of Johnson's new regime. Whilst a lot of attention has been paid to Boris Johnson's dramatic reshuffle, just as important will be the changing of the guard going on behind the scenes. And then Robert Jenrick, the quiet radical now in charge of housing. Why the new housing secretary could be the man to unlock the new homes Britain desperately needs. And then finally, Aberdeen, home to the earliest record of whisky still in 1505, say historians. The reference was found by research fellow Dr. Claire Hawes, who has worked her way through deciphering the 1.5 billion words in Aberdeen's municipal registers. And then for Electric Canadian, I've got another copy of the Canadian Horticulturalist, this time volume 36 for 1913, as we're coming into the war years. The Canadian National and Patriotic Songs. This is dedicated to the children of Canada, and it comes complete with sheet music. Then the Great War video series, key Canadian battles during the First World War led to the March to Victory in 1918. Then I've got the Canadian Liberal Monthly, Volume 2, Number 7, March 1915. And also the Canadian Mother's Book by Helen McMurcity, MD, Chief of the Division of Child Welfare in 1927. Pretty interesting wee book, that. Okay, and for Electric Scotland, we've got Character Sketches by Norman MacLeod in 1876. I've got The Hereditary Sheriffs of Galloway, their forebears and friends, their courts and customs of their times, with notes of the early history, ecclesiastical legends, the baronage and place names of the province, the late Sir Andrew Agnew Bart of Lochnaw, in 2 volumes. And then the transactions of the proceedings of the Freeshire and Galloway Natural History and Antiquarian Society. I've added the volume for 1862 and 63. I've got a catalogue of books relating to Scotland. It's an interesting list of books which are collected from private libraries and offered for sale, and you can read this at a link I provide. Got Transactions of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. It's a Scotland-based scientific journal. An account of the surname Edgar, particularly of Wedderley in Berwickshire by James Henry Lawrence Archer in 1873. Found the Naval Chronicle, providing the first volume of this publication, which went onto 32 issues. Also include a small bio of John MacArthur, one of the 2 editors, being a Scot. And then Memorial of Edinburgh in the Olden Times by Sir David Wilson, LLD, 2nd edition in 2 volumes, published in 1891. Added this to the foot of our Edinburgh page. And then the story, because it's a momentous occasion, is by CapX. Britain doesn't just have a new Prime Minister. Yesterday's cabinet reshuffle makes it clear that we now have a new government with a very different set of priorities. So I hope you enjoy that story. I will say overall, I'm pretty excited about the new Prime Minister and his vision for the country. I think it's time we left, and he said he's going to leave. So I think future generations might just look back at July 2019 the way we today view May 1979, when Margaret Thatcher took office, or July 1945 when Clement Attlee came to power. Realised that it was the moment when things were never quite the same again. So, that's all in this newsletter. Tons to read, things to think about. I must confess I'm delighted Boris Johnson is the new Prime Minister. I think, frankly, he's got great scope to do massive things. I hope he tackles the bias at the BBC. Because frankly, the BBC is so biased that I've lost trust in the BBC News. And it's never going to come back, ever. They've lost my trust forever, I have to say. And considering they're meant to be a neutral organisation, they have to be taken into account. They have to be taken into account. They're anti-British, anti-Brexit certainly, but anti-British in their attitude, traitors to the country, and they shouldn't be getting all that money from the licence fee to spout rubbish to the British people. We've got to hold them to account, and I hope the new government will do so. Okay, so there you go. I think it's a great day for Britain. Great day for the country, and I hope that things will turn out to be much better for the future. And certainly I hope the pound will recover, because it's obviously hurting me a little bit with my pension. So I hope you'll read this newsletter and really enjoy it and be enthused about the potential for the future of the country. And I hope Scotland decides to climb on board, because quite frankly Nicola Sturgeon's pretty anti-Britain, as we all know, of course. But you know, the time comes when you've got to start being realistic about the future of the country and prepare for the best you can for the future. Okay, there you go. That's the newsletter I've got for you this week. Small amount of content, but very important for the future. Okay, hope you all have a great weekend when it comes. Not long now. And obviously, love to hear your comments. Thanks for listening.